It is June 23rd, 1778. Washington has been encamped at Valley Forge, overlooking Philadelphia, to make sure that nothing happens to the Continental capital throughout the winter. The British had taken over Philadelphia after Washington's defeat at Brandywine and his somewhat tie victory at Germantown. A general, von Steuben, came in and helped Washington build the Continental Army from a ragtag team of rebels to a full-fledged professional military. Henry Clinton, the British general in charge of Philadelphia, has been told to go to New York so he can rendezvous with the rest of the British Army and get ready for a southern invasion. So he leaves Philadelphia, and Washington follows right behind him on his coattails. They go through New Jersey, which is known as the crossroads of the American Revolution, which is where I am now in New Jersey. I live in New Jersey. And Washington is going to do his best to stall Clinton from being able to get to his destination. And one of those destinations that he tries to stall him at is at Crosswicks. And that is where we are now. Now, the village of Crosswicks is pretty small. It's a village for a reason. And unlike this gloomy day in October, this is June 1778. There's going to be a lot of heat going on. You know, it's hot, humid. It's not southern weather for sure, but it's still hot, where men are falling out of line on the march because of the heat, and they're dying of heat stroke and stuff like that, and they're getting sick just because of the heat. But on June 23rd of 1778, the British are going to be held up here at Crosswicks in the village, and there's a building right here in front of me, the Quaker Meeting House. It's going to be the site of some damage that's still there in the Revolutionary War skirmish battle of Crosswicks Creek. Because to the north, right where I'm looking at, there's a creek, or I say crick. And I'm going to be saying crick from now on. That way I can say it in my native tongue. So there's a creek up north, not too far, maybe about a quarter mile from here. And that is the creek that the Continentals are going to control and hold and fire upon the British here when they arrive from Black Horse Tavern on that fateful June 23rd day. I have some books with me to help give a better context for that. But as you can see behind me, you can't see it now with the tree. I'll walk over to it. The Quaker Meeting House sustained some damage. It is a cannonball that is lodged in the northern wall. There's stories about it where it was taken away. I remember, this is my second time here. there's stories about it where it was taken away, stolen, and hasn't been able to be found since, and then it was returned only to probably, I think, be stolen again. I can't tell if there is a cannonball in there, but if you look at the photos and the videos I'll put, the cannonball damage is there. Now looking at it from above, it's right there. Looks like there is a bit of a cannonball there. Might be an old fake one, at least for show. But no, that's where it took damage, because the Continentals had some artillery where they used against the British here. And it's just to stall them. There's only like a stalling movement. It was a faint stalling movement that happened here. The numbers, I believe, I think it was like maybe 1,500 Continentals against, the whole army of British that came out of Philadelphia, unless Clinton broke them up. They would march through towns like Haddonfield and Morristown, and that's Moorrestown, not Morristown. But I'm gonna take shade in this tree because it's raining, and most times you're not supposed to do stuff in the rain, but here we are. So we are here, and we're gonna go walk to the creek where most of the action took place. Now, where I'm at, I believe, is where artillery was used, and the Crosswicks Quaker Meeting House actually was used as the headquarters of one of Washington's generals during the Trenton campaign. So it has seen some other historical significance in the past during the Revolutionary War. So we're going to get to the creek and talk more about it. Now, through that tree, that's the Quaker Meeting House. But as I walk around this way, we are going to see just how crazy this location is when it comes to terrain. I'm coming up on a crosswalk here, so I'm going to pause it. So during that action, the goal was to burn the bridge that's down that road where those cars are crossing over now. There used to be a wooden bridge there. But if you look around this way, that's where the Quaker Meeting House is, right there, through those trees. So we got a bit of a hill here. You can kind of see just from here, but coming up and going down, you got that decline in the hill, incline coming up. So you come up to this point, hug the side of the road a little bit. You come up on this point here, and it's a gradual decline or an incline if you're coming up it either way. And as we go down, you will see that the train that the British commanded is quite significant. But on the other side of the creek, the Continentals held a higher ground, because this is just the road here, as you see. And as you turn up, now we can't see really much of the meeting house. Maybe you can see the top where that sign is right here, but the sign's right here. The meeting house is roughly right up there, or above those trees. But as we walk down a little bit further, we'll make it to the bridge. Now this bridge is clearly a modern bridge. This was a wooden bridge back in the day. They tried ripping it up, setting it on fire, and stuff like that, just to delay the British from getting to their destination up in New York. Don't mind some of this construction here, but walking through it. But as we go, turn back around when we get to this bridge, which is coming up. These cars just crossed over. Now, these here are the woods that take a bit to the creek coming up. I tried walking it before I went down with this camera now, taking some pictures and some videos, but there's so much undergrowth down there I wouldn't be able to do it. But this is the creek, Crosswicks Creek, that was the natural barrier between the two, I would say, forces. You can probably see the water down there now. But it's this creek that the Continentals attempted to hold. And all it ever was in an attempt, not something that they planned on actually holding. So like the last man, just delaying tactics. That's all they did. And we're about to walk around now and show the terrain. I'm on the other side here, show you. It's a nicer part of the creek, but I don't think I can get down there at all. But after this car passes, walk across the street, show you the terrain. See it? Car goes up and ends up being a steep incline. Now, the orders, as I said, were just a delay. Delay the British from advancing. That way both armies can gather. Because what happened was that General Washington divided his army. One to follow General Clinton and the Hessians going through New Jersey. And then he had a separate wing come from the north and cross over at Trenton and Princeton to try to cut them off. So an advance party were the ones here to slow them down. And they did. Held them up for a day. It's all you need. Slow down your enemy. And it worked here. But the British were expecting the Continentals to be here. New Jersey militia was here. Regulars were here. And these guys have seen everything from the battle at Brandywine. Some of them were in Quebec. Some of them were at Fort Ticonderoga. And they saw action everywhere, even White Plains. And just Brandywine being the closest one. Now, with that being said, George Washington's army then wasn't much of something to, not necessarily, what's the good word for it? George Washington's army wasn't necessarily professional. There were a lot of professional men in Washington's army. We have Nathaniel Greene, for one. Washington's right hand was here. The Marquis de Lafayette was here. They're not here, but for the Monmouth campaign. You had Charles Lee, Light Horse Harry Lee. That's going to be General Lee's from the Civil War. That's his father here. Yes, you may be surprised. General Robert E. Lee, his father fought in the Revolutionary War. It's a very big difference. This is a 90-something year difference. But no, Robert E. Lee's dad had him really late with a second wife. He's going to be here. We have, I believe, Alexander Hamilton is here. We have some of the most competent generals that Washington is going to have on his staff here for Monmouth. And boy, do they really show up for the Battle of Monmouth. But the precursor for Monmouth is right here at Crosswicks, holding them up. A fairly new professional army, not the ragtag team army, just fighting as best they can. But thanks to von Steuben's efforts in the battle and training Washington's men in European military tactics, that gives the Continental Army the boost it needed in morale, the boost it needed to be able to fight one of the world's greatest, if not the greatest, professional army in the world. And Crosswicks would be the first taste that the British are going to have against this new Continental Army that's been refreshed and reinvigorated and just out for not necessarily vengeance, but they want their payback. They want their dues. They want to prove to the British that they are fighters. They are no longer a ragtag team of rebels. But from here, let's get to some of the story. So I come to you live from, not live, but in the car because it's raining. And I don't want to get my books wet. But we're still here at Crosswicks. And we're going to read an excerpt from A Guide to New Jersey's Revolutionary War Trail for Families and History Buffs by Mark D. Ionno. Now, it says here at the Friends Meeting House at Crosswicks, the little Quaker village of Crosswicks in northwestern Burlington County, where we're at, was a stopping point for General Henry Clinton's army as it marched across New Jersey after evacuating Philadelphia on its way to the Raritan Bay. But before being intercepted by Washington's full force at Monmouth, the British were harassed by American units under Colonel Elias Dayton. On June 23, 1778, 5 days before the big battle at Monmouth, American troops tried to burn the bridge at Crosswicks Creek, leading to a skirmish in the village. It is said that Dayton had his horse shot out from underneath him during the fighting. Also, during the fighting, 3 cannonballs struck the Friends Meeting House, where Clinton's army was centered. One lodged in the north wall and remains there today. But that skirmish was not the first action the meeting house saw in the Revolution. In December 1776, the Americans under Colonel Silas Newcomb used it as a headquarters before the Second Battle of Trenton. So we have it here for our one book. But the most famous book I know about the Battle of Monmouth actually comes from a highly sought after, not sought after, but highly praised book called Fatal Sunday. The George Washington, the Monmouth Campaign, and the Politics of Battle. Now, I have that here. I got this copy up at Fort Ticonderoga. It actually is autographed. And it's by Mark Ewald Lender and Garry Wheeler Stone. And has this to say about the battle here. On page 135, it says, the events of 23rd June, however, did not need a blazing baggage train to provide drama. In fact, that day would see more excitement than any other of the campaign except for the Battle of Monmouth itself. It began with General Leslie. Leaving Black Horse, he pushed toward Bordentown, where a drawbridge nearby spanned Crosswicks Creek. The move led some patriots to believe that the British were moving on Trenton, less than 10 miles north. Leslie's move was anything but an advance. Rather, it was a feint designed to draw Patriot attention from Crosswicks, less than 4 miles away. Clinton intended the division's main body to march through that village on the way to Allentown, but the road led over a bridge and through a pass, and British officers feared that the terrain would favor a Patriot defense. If Leslie's feint could fool the Americans into thinking the main effort would be against Trenton, or if it could at least tie down rebel troops at the drawbridge, it might mean less trouble at Crosswicks. It was worth a try. The initial fighting, however, was not part of the feint. In the morning, some of Leslie's men tangled with militia at Lewis's mill on Black's Creek, near Bordentown. Though not at the target drawbridge, this was the family home and mill of Lieutenant Colonel William Lewis of the 1st Regiment, Burlington County Militia. A foraging detachment from Leslie's column gained the mill, probably to seek provisions. Captain Ewald, with the party, knew the family. He had billeted with them during the British occupation of Bordentown in late 1776, and had found them good company despite their known Patriot affiliation. On the 23rd, he assured a household servant no harm would come to the property, then rejoined Leslie to take part in the later action at the drawbridge. Ewald subsequently heard that there had been fighting around the mill, and both the very beautiful plantation and mill of Mr. Lewis were burned. Having promised the family that the property would be safe, he was devastated at the news. Such are the fortunes of war. Luckily, however, the Jaeger captain was somewhat misinformed. The mill had indeed burned, but not the Lewis home. British troops did damage or destroy some furniture, so that the losses from the mill and household goods came to over 2,043 pounds, a huge sum for the day. But unlike less fortunate patriots along the Redcoat March, the Lewises still had a roof over their heads. So then it goes down. The fight at the bridge had been noisy but relatively harmless skirmish. Dubiously, Ewald reported 10 of his men killed or wounded in the action. Dickinson thought his troops had killed 6 or 7 British over the course of the entire day at both Lewis's mill and at the drawbridge. He listed no militia casualties. Dickinson's account is the more accurate, as Ewald tended to overstate losses. In fact, another Jaeger journal listed only several men wounded and an ammunition wagon damaged. The rebels had cannonaded us severely, Lieutenant von Feilitzsch wrote, but without causing any harm. God be praised. Leslie broke off the action that night, leaving a light guard across from the Patriot forces. Around midnight, he moved on to Crosswicks, where he rejoined the rest of the 1st Division. The last of his men left the Bordentown area near dawn on the 24th. So, late in the day, after the shooting stopped, Continental Light Infantry under Colonel Morgan arrived from Trenton to reinforce the militia. For the rest of the night, both sides remained on opposite banks of the creek. So, but Leslie moved to his target in the late afternoon. Approaching the drawbridge, the Jaegers found it partially dismantled. 4 or 5 planks were missing. Walking out to the gap, they hailed some men they took to be civilians on the other side, and they were not civilians but militia, who opened a fusillade of musketry and cannon fire on the Hessians. Miraculously unscathed, the Jaegers scrambled to safety and returned the compliment. Leslie deployed his command, and the fighting went on until dark. Late in the day, after the shooting stopped, Continental Light Infantry under Colonel Morgan arrived from Trenton to reinforce the militia. So yeah, I kind of read that off, but The matter soon became serious. Receiving a report that the rebels were preparing to stand at the Crosswicks Bridge, Clinton sent the dragoons and Queen's Rangers ahead in an effort to seize it. The road to the bridge led through the village, and as the British approached, they drew the fire of rebel pickets. The Rangers and dragoons tried to cut them off, but the defenders eluded pursuit, running through Crosswicks and crossing the bridge, which lay just north of the village, which is down there where we just went. I'm facing north. Pushing through the town, Captain Charles Stevenson of the Queen's Rangers was hit in the chest and seriously wounded. A disgusted Simcoe thought the shot had come from a Quaker with a long fowling piece. As the Rangers cleared Crosswicks, they emerged at the top of a slope above the vital bridge, which is where we were at when we walked. Um, that was a steep slope, if you can recall. Um, and I'll have footage put up during this. Below, Patriot troops were removing bridge planks and hewing away at trees, hoping to drop them across the bridge timbers. The sight of the British sent the axemen scampering across the bridge, stringers on the heels of the fleeing pickets. The trees were still standing. Taking the village, however, meant little without securing the road to Allentown, and Patriots still held the road beyond the bridge. Strongly posted on the opposite bank lay militia units and most of Maxwell's New Jersey Continentals, well over 500 men in all. In addition to partially destroying the bridge, they had closed downstream sluices, damming the creek and rendering it too deep to ford. The redcoats would have to fight to cross the stream and open the road. The skirmishing began dramatically. As the British main body came up, the dragoons rode down the slope toward the bridge. The rebels turned them away with a long-range volley that was more sound than fury. No dragoons were unhorsed. Simcoe then led a ranger company to the south end of the bridge, while Clinton personally led another ranger company to Simcoe's left. This would not be the only time on the campaign that the British commander displayed a penchant for leading from the front. To the right, the 16th Light Dragoons dismounted and lined a fence, while the British deployed a young Burlington County militiaman, Job Clevenger, showing more courage than sense, rushed onto the span, trying to further disable it. He was shot dead and fell into the creek. Active firing then commenced from both banks of the stream. Clinton sent his engineers forward to repair the span, while Simcoe rode back up the hill to form the remainder of his troops behind the Quaker meeting house, ready to pass the bridge. The weight of the combined British fire was sufficient to suppress much of the rebel opposition. Otherwise, the engineers would have shared the fate of Clevenger. Lieutenant John MacLeod of the Royal Artillery played a key role in this effort. His 2 3-pounders plied the Americans with case shot, metal canisters containing 32 or more 1¼ ounce iron balls. It was too much for the Continentals and militia, and they began to fall back. Some of the militia marched to the right along the York Road, while others in the New Jersey Brigade moved to the left. Seeing the Americans pulling out, the British moved forward. Using the stringers of the bridge, Simcoe led dismounted Queen's Rangers to the opposite bank and launched a vain pursuit of the militia column to the right. Seeking a closer look at the action, Clinton came forward and for a moment was within range of Patriot fire. His red uniform made him conspicuous among the green-coated Rangers, and in the meantime engineers finished their work, allowing the 16th Light Dragoons, a battalion of light infantry, and a battalion of grenadiers to cross the bridge. They joined the pursuit of the retreating Americans, chasing the militia and Continentals to the left. The British followed the rebels another 2 miles until they found the 3rd New Jersey and an artillery company in position behind still another wrecked bridge. This is over Doctor's Creek, a tributary of Crosswicks. The Continentals were strongly posted and seemed disposed to fight. Having had combat enough for the day, the pursuers returned to the main body. And it says Clinton referred to the entire affair as a trifling skirmish. Compared to major battles, of course, he was right. Captain Stevenson apparently was the only serious British casualty. The wounded Ranger was left in the village with an army physician and 2 privates to attend him. Badly wounded through his left breast, Stevenson was only able to give his parole verbally. The Americans lost 3 militiamen killed, including Clevenger, and 7 prisoners. Along the Continentals, Colonel Elias Dayton lost a horse shot out from under him. Dayton was one of Washington's favorite regimental commanders, who was a hard man on horses. He had lost another mount at Germantown in 1777. But small and brief as it was, the Crosswicks skirmish provided plenty of excitement while it lasted. For the 1st Division, 23rd June had been a long day. So, at Crosswicks, the British were satisfied with the day's work. The brief affair assumed larger dimensions as word of the skirmish reached civilians from far from the scene. In Philadelphia, rumors of fighting in New Jersey had been circulating since the British evacuation, and anxious residents did not know what to make of the news from Crosswicks. Quaker diarist Elizabeth Drinker noted that some of her neighbors mistook the sound of thunder for distant cannon fire amid reports that many were slain near Crosswicks. But the truth of the matter, she cautioned, is not yet come out. So, south of the bridge, the Hessian and British grenadiers camped between the village and the creek, while the 3rd and 4th Brigades straddled the road to Black Horse and the Guards covered east flank. Once more, the deployment protected all approaches to the town, securing key terrain should the Patriots again prove troublesome. So, that being said, the Crosswicks Bridge was destroyed anyway, attempt to impede Patriot pursuers. So, and it had another slight skirmish again, but nothing really. That more or less was a skirmish. Now, as it seems, the skirmish from this, for me, this is a battle. I mean, there's over 500, Continentals. They're still killed and wounded. But just like the Battle of Ironworks Hill in Mount Holly, or the Battle of Mount Holly, where the Hessians under von Donop and some of the British, I think they were the 49th Lightfoot Infantry or Dragoons or something like that, fought against the Continentals, under who I can't remember, but there was fighting there. There was artillery duel. They drew them out from Bordentown, stuff like that. This is the same thing for me. This is a battle. This is, in a sense, still hollow ground. Now, sadly, a lot of development happened here. Luckily, the creek doesn't seem to be so developed over, but who would? But over the past 247 years, you see over here, there's a lot of development here, and that's probably one of the sadder things when it comes to history. Now, I'm happy to see that the Friends Meeting House still has uh, the battle damage. It's a reminder that something did happen here, and that's exciting to see. There's even a plaque outside. I have a picture of here. I'll put up that that talks about the skirmish too. So it's not like the historians in the area didn't uh, elude from hiding it under the rugs of any kind of battle or skirmish here, which is exciting to know. And as I know, the Battle of Crosswicks Creek is just one of many, many. I think it's recorded like over like maybe 600 actions and battles happened in New Jersey. I mean, a lot of hollow ground happened in New Jersey. And the book here Guide in New Jersey's Revolutionary War Trail for families and history buffs. It says here on the back that there's over 350 historic sites in the state, and it's the most complete guide ever to the Revolutionary War in the Garden State. So if you're ever in the area, definitely use this as a guide. It gives a very, very brief summary of what happened, but enough to make the reader understand its significance of that place. And you could find these books anywhere. You can find Fatal Sunday at, you can find plenty of copies of Fatal Sunday at bookshop.org, and you can even find a copy of this at the Second Time Books there in Mount Laurel at Rancocas Woods. And check them out, buy it. These books I always highly recommend for history of the sort. And but with that, I hope you'll enjoy this video. It's not necessarily a great sunny weather kind of day, and I took some of this in the car, but sometimes there are days like that, and we can't always be lucky. But if you did like this video, please like, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and I hope to see you in the next video. Have a good one.